Welcome to The Practical People Manager, the podcast for line managers, HR professionals and business leaders who want to manage people well with more confidence and less jargon. In this episode, I'm joined by Ellie Kay, an ADHD coach, trainer, workplace mediator and public speaker. This is part one of a three-part conversation where we start by exploring what ADHD can look like in the workplace, particularly for adults and women who may have gone years without a diagnosis. We also talk about the role line managers play in creating psychologically safe conversations, focusing on strengths and supporting people before workplace challenges escalate. This episode is a practical starting point for better understanding ADHD at work. Let's get into it. So, hi Ellie, welcome.
Hi Anna, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure.
Be really good if we can start off with the listeners having a bit of a background about yourself. So tell us a little bit about your journey and what's brought you to do the work that you're doing today.
Right, well, I've been in recruitment 25 years. I got to the point where I'd had my own business for 20 of those 25. I was looking for something new to do and I decided to go into coaching. Going back a little bit though, I did actually decide to get my diagnosis with ADHD when I was 45. Mm-hmm. So a few years before I changed direction at work, I went through an ADHD diagnosis and found out I was combined type ADHD. So both the hyperactive and the inattentive. I had the diagnosis because for quite a period of time at work, I was thinking, why am I doing these things? Why do I act like this? And increasingly, the awareness about ADHD was coming around. And I was thinking, I really need to know either way because it will explain a lot. Mm-hmm. So I had my ADHD diagnosis, and then a few years later, I had a few team members leave. I found myself on my own again, and I just thought I want to change direction. Yeah. So I trained to be an ADHD coach initially, which gave me a massive understanding of ADHD and all the intricacies of that. But then I realised I needed my ICF coach training too. Yeah. So that was a few months of going through ICF coaching. I also trained as a workplace mediator with it in mind that quite a lot of neurodivergent people end up in that scenario with grievance and disciplinaries and a different way of doing things. And I've also put together like a management training around neurodiversity. And I've also done quite a lot of talks around neurodiversity, both in children and adults.
Great. Busy.
Very busy and typical ADHD going off in different directions and very varied but fun.
Yeah. So how old were you when you got diagnosed then?
So I was 45 when I got diagnosed. Okay. But obviously I've always been ADHD all my life and it just kind of made sense.
In what way then? If you look back at your career, can you see like moments in time where you think, oh, actually that makes sense now?
I think being a big risk taker, setting up my own business when I was 27, that was like and quite a lot of ADHDers do take risks and are entrepreneurs. It's just that impulsivity, just deciding I'm going to set up a business and not spending years thinking about it, but just doing it within a couple of months seems to be a common theme throughout my life. Right. I've set up several businesses, so I guess at those times, the sense of justice and fairness when something's unjust. I mean, why I set up my own business is because I asked for a pay rise and got told to pee off when I was 27. So that's what made me do that, because I felt asking for a slight pay rise, considering I was bringing in most of the business, was just. Yeah. And because I was told those very words, then I set up my own business and they ended up having to fold their business a year or two later.
Oh, that's interesting.
The old justice and fairness came through. Yeah. So that's a common theme. Changing direction in terms of what I'm doing quite easily, but getting bored easily as well with things and frustrated. Forgetting to call people when I said I'm going to call them, putting things in the wrong day in diary, just general disorganisation has been a common theme. Right. Time blindness, trying to do too many things, expecting everything to take 20 minutes, that takes a lot longer. Yeah. So all these things, when you look at what ADHD is, then it's apparent that, that's how I've run my life, in complete organised chaos for a number of years. It's been a lot of fun, but it's certainly been a roller coaster, which is often the case with people who are neurodivergent, especially ADHD.
Yeah. So if someone in the workplace now is, I suppose, maybe they can relate to some of the stuff that you're saying, maybe they feel a bit different in the workplace, what would your advice be to those people who potentially, you know, might want to look at being diagnosed or look into more about ADHD?
Yeah, I think the diagnosis gives you that validation, really. You know, you don't have to be diagnosed to know that you're ADHD. Okay. You know, if you read the symptoms and take online tests and think, yeah, this sounds like me, then that's fine. Yeah. Obviously, you need to be diagnosed if you want to try medication for ADHD, but I think for me it was validating, but it took a lot of time getting my family on board with it. There's a lot of stigma around it with family and friends, so it is a big one. But then I've just found, as the years have gone on since being diagnosed, I'm a lot more comfortable. I mean, I'm comfortable enough to actually be a coach and trainer and make my whole career around it now. Yeah. But at first, it's just that typical understanding of ADHD is not correct. Yeah. It's just young lads running around in a classroom, or the negative sort of connotations around it put people off getting the diagnosis. But I think if it's going to make you feel better and validated in who you are, then it's definitely worth looking into.
Amazing. So, I mean, we hear a lot about neurodiversity, you know, I think more so than we ever had over the last few years. What does it actually mean in practice? If you were to explain what that is, well, how would you explain it to people?
It's just having a different brain to what is classed as a typical, normal, neurotypical brain. So you think differently and behave differently because of that thought process. You can see things that other people can't see. So there's definitely, you know, highs and lows, I guess. But it's just basically having a different brain to what the normal in society is, I guess.
Yeah. And there seems to be a lot of myths around ADHD, and it, you know, really, I think, very misunderstood. What do you think or some of the biggest myths are in the workplace?
I think people just think, oh, ADHD, oh God, really annoying, really loud, really out there, interrupts all the time, which we often do, because we struggle with... if we lose that thought, then it's lost forever. It's this now, not now brain that we have. So if we want to do something now, we have to do it now, or it can go into the ether and never be seen again.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I think the perception is loud, opinionated, hyper, which, you know, is only really a part of ADHD, and not everybody even has that hyper part. Yeah. And for women, it's very different to men as well.
Okay, in what way?
Well, quite a lot of women are inattentive ADHD, so it wouldn't show up as being like constantly wired, jumping around and being restless. It might be more that they've got it going on in the brain. So they've got all these thoughts constantly battling and ideas battling in the brain, and it might come out in terms of changing the thought process, daydreaming as a kid at school, talking a lot rather than sort of bobbing about, constantly moving. But it can make people procrastinate sometimes. It can make people half do things before they go on to something else. So it's all the studies we've done on men, or small men.
Oh, really? What, none were done on women?
Not for a long, long time. And when it's starting to come through now, because women have got hormones, it makes it difficult to do any studies on women. Yeah. So it's quite different. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Well, I never knew that. Different between men and women. It's quite interesting to know.
Well, yeah, most studies were, I think, in science.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of the hormones.
Okay. Interesting. What does ADHD look like on a day-to-day basis? Like, what sort of things might a manager see for someone who potentially has ADHD?
So, yeah, I think procrastinating over the things that they don't want to do. Okay. And they don't want to do those things because they don't get dopamine from it. So really that's when you're saying about what the difference is in brain. Yeah. ADHD has done I mean, it's a lot more scientific than this, but
Yeah.
don't have the same dopamine levels.
Okay.
So that's why people take medication to raise the dopamine levels so
Yeah.
that they can concentrate better. So if it's something that they're really interested in, if you give them a project that they're really interested in, then they will really hyper-focus and they will put hours and hours of work into that, you know, sometimes not even stopping for a drink or the loo or whatever.
really?
Just
Wow.
carry on ploughing through. But if it's stuff that they don't want to do, which is usually things around admin,
Okay.
because they don't get dopamine from that,
Right.
then they will procrastinate over doing it. You know, they'll struggle to do it. They'll make mistakes doing it because their brain's constantly looking for something more exciting.
Okay.
Time blindness is another one, you know, like struggling to be on time, struggling to remember appointments and things, or double booking appointments.
Yeah.
Deadlines as well, you know, it's leaving things to last minute. We do work really well under pressure, better than most people.
Right.
But at the same time, we people please, so we'll say yes to everything. Someone will say, oh, have you got time to do this? And we won't want to say no.
Right.
So then sometimes that can look like letting people down because you're saying yes to a load of stuff and you haven't got the time to do it.
Yeah.
So there's lots, but then obviously the positives are, you know, the great ideas that ADHD has come up with, the creativity.
Yeah.
They're very empathetic and caring and kind. You know, they're extremely calm in a crisis, very resilient. So if they get a knockback, they're resilient, and they're very, very dopamine led. So in roles like sales and things, they excel because they're looking for that hit of a placement or the commission.
Yeah. I know me and you talk about this before, but you can see some likenesses. I think we've talked about myself, haven't I, in regards to there's a few things I do, and I suppose you've made me think, oh, actually, there's a few traits I can see there.
I think there's a lot more people that are not diagnosed, mainly, you know, like women who have been undiagnosed and are suddenly seeing their kids maybe getting diagnosed and thinking, hang on a minute, this is similar to what I'm like.
Right.
But yeah, I think the sense of justice and fairness is a big one. The empathy is another big one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's in the workplace. It can look really good, and it can look not so good sometimes. So it's all about people understanding how that person ticks and how they can help them. That can change them from either excelling in a role to not. Flop in.
I suppose to that point, it's really important as a line manager to really understand your team, then, isn't it, on an individual basis in regards to, I think generally we talk about strengths and development, don't we? But even more so in this case, I think, because you can really then tap into the strengths.
That's it, It's being curious is the absolute number one thing to ask people. If you see them struggling, ask them why, what you can do to help. Rather than saying, why are you struggling? Ask them, how can I help? I can see you struggling with this.
Yeah.
What is it I can make it, you know, I can do to make it easier for you, or is there anything I can put in place? So that's why if you are diagnosed or you know you are ADHD, then it's easier to be able to say that. But that's if your manager is somebody that is kind and empathetic and is forward thinking and will not treat that as a stigma. You know, if it's a welcoming, approachable boss, and you said to a line manager and you said to them, look, I'm ADHD, so these are the things I'm going to struggle with and these are the things I'm going to excel in, then that manager knows where to put that person that's going to make them fly and what they might need help in, or they're going to feel like they've failed. Yeah.
I think part of that, though, is line managers, well, it's that I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to upset anybody. I suppose I get the impression from my experience that they then tend to avoid those conversations, which I'm assuming make things a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, you can't out somebody. So if they haven't said that they are ADHD, you can't say you sound like you could be ADHD. But you could say, I can see that you're struggling with certain parts of your role, as in your timekeeping or whatever. What can I do to make that better? And if you make it psychologically safe by showing understanding and that you care and you want to help that person, then that person might be able to then tell you that they are diagnosed ADHD, or they feel like they might be. Then that opens up a lot better in terms of the language used and how you can help them. Because at the end of the day, it's beneficial for the company if that individual is thriving rather than, you know, like feeling like they're failing.
Yeah. Did you say about psychological safety? I think that's one of the things I think I've noticed is actual people coming forward.
Yeah.
Do you think, I don't know if duty is the right word, but do you think that people should come forward and say they possibly might be ADHD or they've been diagnosed to get that support? Do you think that's necessary?
I think it absolutely is, but that's only if they trust their managers to be to respond in the right way.
Yeah.
Because I've heard clients who've said, you know, that I've spoke about it in really bad ways and saying, oh, you're just using it as an excuse. And you know,
the manager says that to the person?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
and why are you carrying it around with you like it's a negative? Well, you should be using it as a positive.
Okay.
And I know people who've, you know, like are really, really well with ADHD. How come you're not? And so there's been a lot of mixed responses.
Yeah.
You know, to what people have said.
Yeah.
So I think that's the worry. And I wouldn't be able to ever sort of categorically say you should definitely tell your manager.
Yeah.
You know what they're like, you know how they've responded to other people who've maybe come forward with different things. If it's been a good response, then yes, it's definitely worth coming forward.
Yeah.
If it's not, then I can understand why they might be reluctant to. But I guess you have to weigh up whether it's worth telling them.
Yeah.
Because then you're hoping that they will understand where you need the support and why you're struggling in certain areas versus trying to mask and trying to overcome these situations that you're always going to struggle with.
Yeah.
So like I did a talk last week for a group of parents of neurodivergent children and Senkos at schools.
Yeah.
And I was saying basically the bad news is that your kids are always going to have these challenges, but the good news is they've got all these strengths, and we're going through all the strengths. And the strengths in, if you use a strength-based approach to parenting, then that is focusing on all the good bits. Well, it's the same in the workplace. If you use the strength-based approach to your staff and think, Ellie's great at ideas, she's great at creativity, she's great at writing, but she really struggles with attention to detail on invoices or on emails that she's sending. She's dyslexic as well, which I am dyslexic. She needs some help around that. She's going to forget to do this, and she can't do an advert properly because she can't get the full detailing. She gets bored halfway through, but she's excellent at starting, doing this project, coming up with these ideas, meeting clients, meeting customers, getting sales over the line. So it makes sense really that the people that are going to excel in certain areas, you're going to use those strengths to make the most out of them and assist them in the areas of challenge as you would a child. Yeah.
I think that's such a good way of looking at it. I think to your point, people seem to, well, in my experience, focus on the challenge. Like it's really challenging having an employee who's got ADHD or is no, I can't even speak now, neurodiverse. But to your point, I think it's important to really focus on the strengths. That's such an important way to look at it.
Definitely.
So let's think about from a line manager point of view, how might you want to start that conversation then with an individual to start focusing on what their strengths are and the key things you want them to kind of think about from a performance point of view, maybe some key things you want them to do differently, you want them to develop them on. How might you start that conversation?
Well, I suppose when you have them in on a one-to-one for any manager, whether it's of neurodivergent people or not, it is saying, always focusing on the things that they're good at and giving them a bit of a, like an ego boost is always the key to being a good manager, I think, and saying where people excel. And then when you come on to the areas that they struggle, it's saying, I can see that you're challenged in this area, do you feel like this is something that how do you feel like we could support you with it? Which, you do really well at this. Is that because you're interested in it? What is it about this task that you like so much? Ask their opinion on how you could support them in another area. So it's always in management. When I was a manager for 20 years, with various staff members, it's always focusing on the good bits, but then saying, I can see you struggling with this. Do you want me to help you? Do you want to run that by me first? What can I do to support you? as I say, the same with children. When we were growing up, probably said, you can't do that, you can't do that. Let's, like berating you for the stuff that you can't do, and trying to work on the challenges rather than excelling them in those strengths. So I think it's always approaching it with the good bits first, and then the bits that they're struggling, more than saying, you're not doing this right, you need to do better at this. More saying, how can we help you? I can see you struggling in this area. What can we do to support you? And maybe even look to take off them certain tasks.
Oh, right.
And delegate them elsewhere, because that person's, if they're ADHD, they're never going to potentially get that much better at that particular task. It's always going to be a problem. So if I was running a business, I would be thinking, I'd be better getting an admin support for that person and get them to spend more time doing this, the stuff that they're amazing at, and take those couple of hours a week off them with this admin bit and get them some support around that. Just makes sense.
That's interesting, because I think when you look at someone's performance, if, like you say, that admin part is part of their role, you may then consider them not performing at the level that you're looking for. But what you're saying is they probably will never be able to perform at that level.
They will struggle without support. So what I do when I'm coaching clients who really struggle with the admin thing is, and that's where good management comes in, is you might say, look, I know you're struggling with this admin bit. What I want you to do is just concentrate on that for a short bursts of time every day, like do it for half an hour in the morning, then move on to the stuff that you like. Think about things like body doubling, sitting with them while they're doing that task. It is always going to be a struggle. They can put things in place to make it a bit easier, like say working alongside somebody, having a bit of structure in the day where they've got things that they really don't like followed by something that they really do like, without them feeling micromanaged. But I can see it, if it was an admin role that somebody's doing. But I do know ADHDers that are good at admin because they actually like doing it for somebody else, and if that's their actual job, they can, if they're inattentive or they've got any of the autistic traits, can do a good job at that. But then the life admin they struggle with. So it's not just saying admin's not good for ADHD, but it's just working out which bits they can, how you can make it easier for them to get the stuff done that they struggle with.
Just thinking now, with your experience in recruitment, which obviously I know that you started off in recruitment, I think that's a starting point, isn't it, when you're recruiting people? What do you think we can do at that recruitment stage in regards to whether it's reasonable adjustments, whether it's, I suppose, how do you tap into that talent when you're interviewing? And I suppose support someone who's neurodivergent in regards to, I suppose, making it more possible for them to get that role?
Again, I think that there's a big reluctance for people to actually admit their ADHD at that interview stage, because they feel like there's a stigma attached to it still. So, I've heard people get quite far down the role with a job and then disclose that they're ADHD and not get that job. So there is that. Because I suppose the company, if they've had a bad experience with someone ADHD, they just think everybody that's ADHD is going to be like that, which is not the case, because every ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD, the next person could be completely different in how those traits show up, and they could have a mix of other things in there as well that make it different. But if you wanted to attract talent like that, I think in recruitment, because I used to recruit recruitment consultants themselves for 10 years, it was cutthroat. You would put people on the spot with questioning without them having any chance to prepare answers, and that was the norm. That's what I did. That's what, when I interviewed people, I would, and some of the questions being crazy things like what sort of car would you be or whatever, and crazy scenarios, just to see. But then what you're doing is you're taking on people that are great at thinking on the feet, I guess, which is a good thing. But I tended to employ a load of people that were very much like me, that could think on the feet. But then I needed people who were good at doing deep research into great candidates who were willing to write detailed headhunts and detailed adverts. But I didn't have that, because I just had a load of people like me who could think on the spot and were great people, at chatting to people, but not great at doing the other aspects of it. So it's thinking about a mixed office all the time. So whatever the role is that you're looking for, if they don't need that quick think on the feet, then it is better to give questions in advance, or quite a good proportion of them in advance.
Yeah.
Because then you're not just getting answers based on the ability to think on the spot of a memory from like 20 years ago when they've got an example, but actually really think about good examples that they can bring to that interview. So you're basing who you take on not just on whether they're good at remembering, but on who's got the best examples and how they've framed it, really.
Yeah. It's a good point, actually, because I think I read most recently around giving the questions beforehand. And I think some businesses are like, oh no, then they're going to, use, AI, they're going to, preempt and tell you what you want to know. But to your point, you see a different side of that person, don't you? And I think even when you're looking at interviewing, I saw somewhere that instead of having an interview like we're sat here together now, I'm interviewing you, as it were, but actually have a walk around with them, talk them through, and I suppose pose those questions a bit differently, or make it more of a natural conversation, because you then start to see the real person. Yeah,
that's right. And I think for neurodivergent people that are in particular autistic or AuDHD, they really struggle with eye contact. So sitting opposite somebody, having an interview where they've literally got to sit there opposite is unnatural. So like my hairdresser, she's AuDHD and she loves hairdressing because she loves chatting, but she says she doesn't have to give direct eye contact. Because the person sat in front, she's doing her hair, but she's chatting away. But if she was sat opposite somebody, she'd really struggle with the eye contact. So I think walking or sitting on an angle when you're interviewing, rather than just having to stare in someone's face, which is unnatural, could work well. Or maybe on a second interview, at least have a bit of a walk and talk. A lot of people do therapy or coaching when they're walking and talking, so that it's easier.
How do you think businesses can attract, I suppose, more of a diverse workforce when it comes to people who are neurodivergent? What sort of things do you reckon a business could do?
I think that they need to do a lot more around well-being. What I saw was in recruitment when I left a year and a half ago was a massive shift from when I first started 25 years ago, where people were willing to work really long hours, they wanted the biggest money, they wanted the most commission. These are the things that they were incentivized by. Now it's more work-life balance, time off, well-being days, all these kind of things. So I think as a company, if you're saying that you're inclusive, really mean it. So that would mean stuff like having a mental health days taken whenever, like a few times a year. So, you're able to, if you're not feeling yourself, if you're feeling overwhelmed or whatever, you can take a day off at short notice, or you can work from home at short notice. Be a bit flexible in terms of that, because what happens with ADHD is they work super hard for like 4 days, and on the 5th day they just crash. Because they're so hyper focused. If it's something that they're interested in, they're so hyper focused, and they'll do so many hours that they'll just burn out on that 5th day. And so it's thinking this person might need to work a little bit different. It's not a 9 to 5 job. They're working 7 till 7, and then they might need a bit of a short day on the last one, or a day. So the more flexibility that you can give, the more you're going to attract people who are ADHD, because otherwise a lot of them just set up on their own, and then they're competing with businesses because they've got all these ideas and things like that.
It's interesting because a lot of businesses, I know since COVID, a lot of people were working from home, but I think that flexibility just seems to be getting narrower and narrower, isn't it, in regards to people want their employees back in the office, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which I don't think is everybody. Last week I went to a talk and they talked about that, think about as an employer, what are you offering? Are you flexible? Do you do hybrid working? And I think to your point, that flexibility is so important for many people. And it's amazing how many businesses, I think it's about trust, isn't it? Trusting actually that flexibility, you get the best out of your people, but a business also wants to see, well, where's the output to that? Where's my return on investment? If I give you flexibility, do I trust that I'm going to get the workload out of you? But it's an interesting mindset, I suppose, that gets businesses to really trust their employees.
Yeah, and it's before COVID, I would never, ever have imagined in recruitment that you would ever work from home. It was unheard of, and there was no flexibility at all. But it's great that we now have that.
Yeah.
But like you say, more and more people are saying they need to go back in the office certain days. And I know that has caused a lot of neurodivergent people to think, well, I'm going to go freelance.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to work for
that's
myself
true.
because I want the flexibility of it. I don't want to be told I have to go in the office on certain days, especially if they've got sensory issues. So I get migraines. So if I was sat under under this light in the studio like all day, I would literally have a really severe migraine.
Right.
So I mean, obviously I managed for 45 years with that, but I did have migraines on and off and really quite bad headaches. But I think for people who are autistic, noises can really distract them. So just like the noise of the fan there now, or like if there was a washing machine going or whatever, they literally couldn't concentrate, somebody tapping keyboards and things. So some of those, if they have those kind of sensory issues, then they would work better at home than they would in the office. You'd get more output from them at home than in the office. So I guess it's looking at individual people, but what workplaces really need to know is that it is a disability. It is ADHD and any neurodivergence. It is a 30% difference in terms of the executive functioning.
Okay.
So all you're doing with reasonable adjustments is you are leveling the playing field. So it is, there is these struggles that are definitely there, and you're sort of making it easier for somebody who's neurodivergent to be at the same level as other people. It's as simple as that. It's not like a physical disability, but it is a disability that makes it harder to do certain things and to work in certain ways.
That brings us to the end of part 1 of my conversation with Ellie. I really hope this episode has helped you think differently about ADHD in the workplace, not just as a set of challenges, but also as a different way of thinking, working and contributing. One of the biggest takeaways for me is the importance of curiosity. As line managers, we don't need to diagnose, label, or have all the answers, but we do need to notice, ask supportive questions, create trust, and understand what helps each person do their best work. In part 2, we continue the conversation with Ellie, where she explains the different types of ADHD, how ADHD and autism can show up differently, and why line managers need to focus less on assumptions and more on asking better questions. Thank you, Ellie, for joining me for this 3-part conversation. I'll include Ellie's details and the resources mentioned in the show notes. You'll also find my details too, including how to connect with me on LinkedIn, TikTok and Instagram, as well as finding out more about my work through The People Expert. Thank you for listening to The Practical People Manager. If this episode resonates with you, please like, follow or subscribe and share with another line manager or HR professional and join me for part 2. And remember, being a people manager is not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to listen, learn and support the people around you.